Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Adam Kligfeld's weekly Rashi study class.
Hello, whatever time it is, if you're listening to this in the Temple Beth Am podcast. Here we are with Rashi Class. I'll say this again at the end of the class, but I'll start here. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I forgot already. I asked for people to share some thoughts about whether or not starting when school is over, which is now over, people are ready to come back and learn in person. My commitment, at least for the short term and possibly for the long term, is that even if we are meeting in person, that we'll continue to do this on Zoom, although the focus might change in terms of just where I'm looking, because we obviously want to include people who either can't come to the building or are not yet comfortable. But gosh, it would be nice to start studying Torah together in person. I heard from two people. One person said, yes, how come you didn't do this 6 months ago? And one person said, I'm not yet comfortable. So what I don't yet have is anything close to a sense of what the majority or plurality of opinions are. So please, if you don't want to share that opinion in the group, just send me an email. You can even do it right now during the class or afterwards. And if 60, 70% of the regulars saying, yes, I'm willing to come back in person, then I'm inclined to do that because we haven't studied together in person quite a long time. And so much of communal life now is back to happening in person, right? We have hundreds of people in the sanctuary for B'nai Mitzvah. I'm not suggesting, again, that everyone has to be comfortable with that, but we're back to a stage in our activities where people feel protected, hopefully because of their shots and their boosters. And we're doing things in real life. So I'd like to bring our class back to that, but I'm obviously not going to impose it if the particular subgroup of this class is not yet ready. So please email me after the class. All right. We have one last Rashi to do on verse 14 of chapter 5 of the book of Shemot. And it's a short grammatical comment on a word that we already dealt with last week, but Rashi adds one more comment. This is Rashi does this occasionally where he'll comment on the phrase and then come back to one of the words in the phrase to explicate it a little more clearly on a grammatical level. You know, our instincts might be the reverse, right? Let's first let everyone know what each word means and then put the whole phrase together. Sometimes Rashi does that in reverse. Let's read the whole verse just to get going, and then we'll go to the Rashis. Those who are texting about your preferences here to me personally, thank you. Also email me because I'm not necessarily gonna have a record of all this, and I want to not forget who said they're willing to meet in person. Okay, verse 14, chapter 5. Vayuku shotrei b'nei Yisrael. The supervisors, that's the word we've been using. We know it doesn't really mean supervisors, but the Israelite supervisors of the Israelites, Asher Samu Alehem Nogsei Pharaoh, whom the taskmasters of Pharaoh had placed over them, Lamor. They were smitten by Yuku. They were hit, saying, Madua lo chilitem chochem lilbon kitmo shalshom. Why have you not completed your obligation, your due, your chok, your rule, lilbon, to make bricks, kitmo shalshom, as was previous? We're not going back into the many possible ways of understanding the time concept in kitmo shalshom. We did that at length last week. Gam tmol, gam hayom, neither yesterday nor today. We dealt with the meaning of the verse. Rashi just has one more comment on the word vayuku, which is indeed even if you know a little bit about Hebrew grammar, it's a verb constructed interestingly enough that it's worth his commenting on. If it is evocative to you of vayuchulu, right, from the word kol. Kol means to be all, to be complete, and vayuchulu hashamayim v'haaretz is in a biblical binyan called hufal. It's one of the passive forms. So vayuchulu means that the heavens and the earth were completed. Not that the heavens and the earth completed anything. They are the object of the completion being done by the silent subject and the verb. The silent subject of the verb is God, right? So here you have a vayuku, and even though we knew this, Rashi wants to make sure that we really understand who's doing what action, particularly because we have two layers of people who are exerting some influence over the actual Israelites. They're the Shotrim, the Israelite capos, as it were, and the Nogsim, the Egyptian taskmasters. So let's see. Joel, do you want to just read the short Rashi on Vayuku? Oh, hi, Rachel in Tel Aviv. So nice to have you from across 10 time zones. Hope
Yeah.
you're in a good place.
I just checked into my hotel like 10 minutes ago.
Can't hear you, Rachel, but I'm glad.
Okay.
She said she just checked into the city hotel 10 minutes ago.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Well, now I hear you. Well, I'm so glad your priorities are such that you checked in, and before you even looked at the view, you opened up Rashi Class. Okay.
Yeah.
Joel, Vayuku.
Vayuku, Lashon Vayufalu, Ubu Miyad Acherim, Anokshim Havum.
Kum, those are ku. So Uku and then Hikum. So
okay, this is in the language of Vayafulu, passive, Hufa.
Right.
They were beaten by others, being the in other words, the taskmasters beat them.
Correct. And again, if you're reading this and you're saying to yourself, yes, of course, that's what the verse meant,
Right.
and why would Rashi waste words on it, right? Some of the commentaries on Rashi say, just lest you, particularly because the Torah is when you're looking at the original text, is a vowel-less text, and Vayuku is spelled in letters the same way as Vayaku would be spelled, and Vayaku would have meant that the Shotrim, that the, almost like a rebellion, that the supervisors of the Israelites smote. Whom did they smite? The very taskmasters who had been placed upon them. Lest you think that that's what's going on. Not that we did think that, but sometimes Rashi disabuses of a notion that we would not necessarily have come to on our own. No, it's passive, and it's Vayuku. And in modern Hebrew grammar, we name the way we talk about a verb is we name what binyan it's in. Vayuku, oh, that's in Hufal. The way Rashi says that is instead of naming the binyan Hufal, he just puts the vowels of that verb that we're looking at, Vayuku, into a Hufal form as if the root of the verb were Pa'al. So he says Vayuku, that's Vayuf Alu. That's Rashi's way of saying it's Hufal. Who's doing the hitting? The Noksim. Who are being hit? The Shotrim. We knew that. Rashi just wanted to clarify that. Let me just pause there. Any questions or comments on what the words of the Rashi mean or what the word in the verse means? Joanna?
If I understood what you just said correctly, you were reading this as a possible read of, if it was vocalized differently, that the Shotrim rebelled against the Noksim.
I was saying that might be one of the Havaminas that Rashi wants to make sure we don't think of, right? He wants to disabuse us of that possibility. Maybe it's a silent assumption, but right. I'm pretty convinced that Rashi almost always has a reason why he's saying something. And so if it looks obvious, then it must be that there's something else he wants to make sure we don't read into the verse.
Because I would, without Rashi's commentary and without knowing that, without Rashi's previous comment also, to know that the Shotrim were from among Bnei Israel, not just like a lower level of Egyptians, I think a possible read of this verse is that the Shotrim beat the slaves, and that the Shotrim said to the slaves, Madua lo chilitem. So you really need to know that the Shotrim were from among Bnei Israel, and this understanding of the passive, to know that it's the Nokshim who are speaking here, and it's the Noksim who are doing the beating.
Tell me the first part of that one more time. I got the second part. So
I could read this as when we get to Lemor, who's doing the speaking in this verse? It's the Noksim, right? They are the subject. But I think if this verb wasn't in Hufal, you could read it as the Shotrim are the subject of the sentence, and the Shotrim are speaking to the slaves. No, it's the Nochim speaking to the Shotrim.
Got it.
So I think we need both of Rashi's comments in order to understand this, and in order to appreciate that the Shotrim were not beating their own.
That's great. So basically, you've crafted a Havamina on the other side of the. I use the word Havamina. Havamina is the Talmudic way of saying that which I would have said, right? So literally, Haiti Omer, I would have said that we both do not want to think that the Shotrim were rebelling against the Nogsim and they were smiting them, nor do we want to think that the Shotrim were being overly imperious to the Israelites, you're saying, and hocking their chinik. No, they're the ones who are caught in between, and they're actually taking the brunt of the Nogsim's anger. Very, very interesting. Yeah, that's possible as well. I don't know how to divine which of those possibilities Rashi is trying to convince us is not the right possibility, but I like that you opened up that as a possible possibility. Great. Anyone else in this verse? Going once? Okay. Oh, yes, Joel.
I just wanted to comment that Rashi is himself is not vowelized, right? So I was just trying to explain an unvowelized by putting it in other letters. It could be v'yifalu instead of vayufalu, right? I mean, except when it says miyad acherim, right?
Yeah, you're right-ish, right? In Rashi's own handwriting, we did not get those vowels. But by writing it out vayuf alu, that vav in the yuf in the yuf al, even without the shuruk dot next to it, tells you that it's in a u-ah form rather than a a-e, right? So your vayuf alu is just vav yud pei ayin lamed vav.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is that the Torah Chaim? I wasn't looking at that. I was looking at my other form.
It's the Art Scrolls.
The Art Scrolls version of Rashi does not put the vav in the vayufalu. That's interesting. Hold on one second.
In the Torah Chaim, it has the vav.
Yeah, the vav is very significant for the very reason that you just mentioned, Joel. How come I can't? Right. Vayufalu. Yeah. I mean, I suppose that. Listen, if the Art Scroll doesn't include the vav, it probably means there are manuscripts or versions of the Rashi where it's not, in which case, I suppose the words huku miyad acherim become more significant, because if by writing the word vayufalu with a vav is dispositive, letting you know that it's in the hufal, then all of a sudden within the Rashi, the words, quote, huku miyad acherim are redundant. Now, we don't hold Rashi to the same non-redundancy standard that Rashi holds the Torah to, but if we wanted to, we could say, why does Rashi add the words huku miyad acherim? They were hit by the hands of others, because it's maybe that even if since he's also not writing in vowels, as you say, Joel, even writing it out vayufalu without the vav leaves it as with an ambiguity. It's interesting.
And huku has a vav?
Huku has a vav in both of the versions that I'm looking. Does your huku have a vav?
No.
So interesting. Well, then the miyad acherim becomes even more significant, right? Because the miyad acherim has to come from a passive verb. Great. All right, Joel, you're still up, and do you want to read the next verse in the Torah?
Vayavo.
Yeah.
Vayvoy shotrei bnei Yisrael vayitzaku el paro lemor. Lama ta'aseh ko la'avdecha.
Right, and if we're really 100% precise, it's lama ta'aseh cho. The word is ko, but this is our friend Beged Kefet in front of the letter for the word ko, and the previous word it ends in an ahoy letter, aleph he vav yud. I don't see Rick on today. Is Rick here today? Oh, he is here. So we'll in a second we'll get to what's particularly interesting about the word ta'aseh, and it's for grammar nerds, it's interesting not only in terms of its being a unique trup, but then the system understanding the relationship between the trup in the word ta'aseh and the word ko, such that the hey of ta'aseh takes out the dagesh in the word ko. But we'll get to that in a second. First, translate.
So the how are we doing, Shotrei? Over
That's fine.
overseers.
Yeah.
The overseers of Bnei Israel went to and yelled at Paro, saying, "Why are you doing this to your slaves?"
Good. So let's just fill this out a little bit, right? So in the previous verse, particularly now that we've gone through it with a finer tooth comb, we have the Shotrim in a terrible position. They have been informed by the Nogsim, who were informed by Pharaoh, that they are supposed to levy on their own people a harder task even than before, and it was already hard. The Vayuku is telling us that they are neither pushing back directly against the Nogsim, nor are they willing to push down upon the Israelites. And they were smitten, right? And let's add some reality to it. I mean, they were whipped, they were beaten. And then the next verse, they take their case to Pharaoh. It's interesting. They're not taking their case to the Nogsim. They're taking their case to Pharaoh. They, beaten down and potentially injured, go to Pharaoh, and their cry is not upon the people who are pushing down on them, but on the person who's pushing down on the people who are pushing down on them. Why do you do this to your to ha'abadim shecha, your slaves? Now, what do we think the tone of voice or what are the words not said but implied by the words lama ta'aseh chol avadecha? Why do you do that to your slaves? Because I think there could be several possibilities as to what's being conveyed in the actual scene, and what we imagine is being conveyed by the Torah choosing it to write it that way. What are they actually saying to Pharaoh? Why are you doing this to your slaves? Joanna?
I think there's a possibility here that Avadecha doesn't refer to all of Bnei Israel, but the Shotrim are referring to themselves, right? They are servants of Paro in this position that they have. And they're kind of saying to Paro, hey, Paro, like, you've appointed us to help you out in some way. And like, how can we do our job if this is what you're imposing upon us? Like, meet us halfway so that we can help you out in the way that you're asking of us.
Good. So that's a really strong possibility, that the Shotrim's turning to Pharaoh is reasonable and tactical, right? We'd say in Talmudic language, l'ta'amecha, even from your perspective, Pharaoh, we're with you. Yeah, we're on the team. We're on Team Pharaoh. We're on Team Nogsim. We are, we're hurting from the whipping, but we're with you. But in order for us to get the most out of the very people that we're responsible for, this is not the best way of doing it. So that's one tone that we could suggest is going on here. Before I call on Larry, welcome Deborah, who's joining the class, I think for the first time. All of us are working out of different texts of Rashi. What I'm going to do is just send you a quick link to the Safaria page that we're on. Hold on one second, friends. I want to make sure that Deborah can follow along. We're on verse 18, right? No, verse 15. Okay. So Deborah, I'm going to put the Safaria link right into the chat, and you can open that up and then continue to navigate from there. And then if you want to, oops, that was sent to Elon by accident. And then if you want to continue studying with us, which is great, I'll give you a suggestion offline as to which book to actually purchase, but you can get most of it from Safaria. Okay. Larry.
Well, to Joanna's point, the translation that Aryeh Kaplan has is very interesting, because it says, the Israelite foreman came and protested to Pharaoh, quotation marks, why are you doing this to us? They said.
Okay, right. So given your basic knowledge of how Hebrew works in the Torah, can you explain, like, there's an explanation for what Aryeh Kaplan is doing there, even though it's not the only way of reading it. What's his explanation for why it's okay to put the word us in exchange for the Hebrew word avadecha, your servants?
Because that's the way in which people often, the Torah is written that way very often. Your servant meaning me.
Correct.
And I can't give you, I'm sure that you can come up with 24, if not far more examples of that.
Correct. The one that comes to mind immediately is the scene between oh my God, when Abraham is purchasing Marata Machpelah, and they're each referring to themselves in the present as Avdecha, right? Like, it's honorific. It's very Middle Eastern. It's your humble servant is so happy to see you, referring to one's self, right? So it really could be here that Aryeh Kaplan is just actually right, that what the Shotrim are saying is, why would you put us, who are also your servants, in this situation of trying to extract from our own people more than they're able to produce? Or it could be plainer. It could be, the Shotrim are not your avadim, your slaves. We're on your team. Why are you imposing something so harsh on your avadim? It's actually going to backfire on you. There's literally no way to resolve that, but that's an interesting read that Aryeh Kaplan does. Everett Fox does not go that way, or Everett Fox leaves it ambiguous. He says, the officers of the children, officers, interesting word. I think he's using that to try to connect Shotrim modern, police officers with Shotrim biblical. The Shotrim of the children, the officers of the children of Israel came and cried out to Pharaoh, saying, why do you do this? Why do you do thus to your servants? And so your servants could mean either us or the people that were responsible to oversee.
I was just going to say that Alter doesn't translate that way. He translates it as your servants. But in his comment to the previous verse, 14, he's making it clear that this is, in fact, then the overseers, who are the Israelite overseers who are turning to them. I just wanted to make a quick comment. Number one, I encourage everybody after the class now, but before the class and probably for the next couple of weeks, we'll be on this. You have to go back, I think, and read the whole story before, and then go back to the verse. You have to keep going back, because otherwise you get lost in the verses, because it's a great story. And I have to believe that there's got to be not just some commentary in the Midrashim, which I'm going to look up afterwards, but maybe even entire chapters or books written on this particular vignette. And the one commentary I would really like to see one day is the commentary by the guy that does the comic strip Dilbert, that deals with offices and office relationships, because this is all about the relationships in the hierarchy. You've got 4 levels of hierarchy here, going from the Pharaoh to his administrators to the taskmasters to the slaves themselves. And I'm not going to go on and on, but one can go on and on about the way in which this works itself out.
Yeah, these are 3 verses kind of exposing everything that you could say, or a lot of things you could say about middle management, right? And the hard situation they're sometimes in. Are they looking up? Are they looking down? And are they looking out for themselves? Are they looking out for the interests of the whole institution, the whole company, or are they looking out for the people that have to answer to them, right? And these Shotrim are very Dilberty. So I appreciate that. And if
not Adams, I just remembered his name.
Well, if you're looking forward to reading that commentary, write that commentary. Darn it! I want to read the Larry Herman commentary on this material. Barry, then Stevie.
Well, put more into context here, the Shotrim, they have been relatively light on the Israelites, not pressuring them overdue, and so they underproduce. And now they're going to Pharaoh. Why are you doing this? Either this is kind of two-faced, or they're representing themselves not as Shotrim but as Bnei Israel. Why are you doing this to us?
Right.
I can't see them as being two-faced. So they must be representing themselves as Bnei Israel.
Yeah. And again, we can think about 20th century versions of this in the Jewish community and beyond, where the brethren of the ones who are most oppressed are called into horrific duty to be part of the oppression, and then to figure out which of their identities do they present, what's best for them and what's best for the Israelites in terms of what hats they wear when they walk into Pharaoh, representing their own rung in the hierarchy, or representing the interests of their own people. And again, it goes back to when Moshe is the first time figuring out his identity and what hat he wears and who he represents and who he's responsible to and what's risked when you start identifying with the identity of the oppressed. There's a risk there, but that might be the most moral thing to do.
If I think I'd add also that there's comments that because of what the Shodrim have just done, so they're placed among the Sanhedrin. So again, this is not two-faced. They are of the Bnei Israel, and they're trying to reduce the burden.
Good. Barry's referencing a midrash that we read last week that in exchange for being able to, like, basically putting their bodies in between Pharaoh and the Israelites, they're rewarded with being, that they or their descendants being the rabbinic decisors of the Jewish people. Great. Stevie and then Rick.
Yeah. So there's often like intentional ambiguity, and like I think Avedecha could definitely mean both the overseers or the supervisors and the population. And specifically, if you look at the next verse, skipping ahead, the word Avedecha comes twice. The first time talking about there being no straw delivered, which seems to be referring to the slave working population, and the second time referring to the being whipped, which seems to clearly refer to the supervisor population. So the word Avedecha means both. Like it has to mean both.
Yeah, great. That's a wonderful pickup. Everyone sees that in the next verse. The word in our verse whose precise meaning we are debating, it's almost impossible to read the next verse without the word Avedecha meaning both of those things. That's wonderful. We'll linger on that when we get to that verse. But I appreciate both you and Larry making the pace of this class is that we're doing it letter by letter, and sometimes keeping the previous verses in mind, and sometimes looking ahead a verse or two helps clarify some of the questions that Rashi is dealing with. And of course, Rashi knew that too, right? Rashi is actually quiet on this verse, so we're pontificating, but Rashi himself has nothing to add on this verse. Rick, take it away.
Hi. So I wrote to you about the merchak kfula underneath ta'aseh. Did you want to show people or to share screen or no?
Share what screen?
I sent you the PDF about the five of them. There's only five in the Torah. This one
that I didn't get. I got your.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't get a PDF from you, as far as I know. But
I thought I attached it. Okay, that's fine. So under Ta'aseh, there's two curves, and there's only five of them in the Torah where it happens. And I really love that Barry said two-faced because it's a doubling. Ta'aseh, why are you doing this, Pharaoh? And I thought it would relate to what Pharaoh was doing, but you could relate it to the actual overseers if they were being two-faced or not, I suppose. But I just wanted to bring it up, that it's so rare that it's, and I wish Rashi had drashed about it, but he didn't. So I'm not sure what to do with it, but the emphasis on ta'aseh, that there's two things going on there in the music. And the last one, the first one was in Genesis when Yaakov is bringing wine to Yitzchak, and he's pretending to be Esav. So I like that doubling there. So anyway.
Right. So just to put a finer point on it,
please.
The trup on the word ta'aseh is a very rare trup, as Rick pointed out, only five of them. There are different understandings of how it should be sung. It's usually in a place, the kfula, which looks like a double mercha, like a double curve. It's usually in a place where you would expect not a single mercha, but rather a tavir, right? So it's here, it's after the darga trup. So you might expect it to be lama ta'aseh darga tavir.
Yes.
And you can even think about the way it's written. What is a tavir sign? A tavir, that the note that you'd expect is this curve. I have to do this. I this curve and a dot.
Yeah.
So this curve and a dot is Tavir, but instead of having the dot, you have this curve and a second curve, right? The way I was taught to do a kfula is it doesn't really sound like a Tavir, and it doesn't sound like a doubling of a mercha. It's its own trup, and it goes like this: Lama ta'aseh, which, as Rick and I realize, is very similar to the notes of a different trup in Haftorah trup. And all these trup systems are very close cousins to one another. What's interesting is that the way I learned to read a ta'aseh, a kfula, the music ends or resolves at the end of it. So I'd be laning it, lama ta'aseh, kind of a stop, cho la'avadecha, as if there's a real gap musically between ta'aseh and the word cho la'avadecha. But grammatically, they're connected, because the lack of the dagesh in the word ko that makes it cho suggests that not only does the previous word ta'aseh end in one of the four letters aleph, hey, vav, yud, ahoy, but that musically those words are considered to be conjunctive, connected to one another. It doesn't sound that way when I sing it, but the way biblical grammar understands the connection there, ta'aseh and ko are united in the verse, right? What Rick was riffing on is the name of the trup, kfula, a doubling, is that in and of itself a play on what's happening in the verse, and that's always a wonderful thing to explore in our minds. There's no way to resolve it, but it's an interesting thing to consider. So yeah, that's one of five. I guess that makes it the third most uncommon trup in the system. If you count the Karnei Farah Yerach Ben Yomo as a single trup, which happens once in Parshat Matot, I always forget if it's Matot or Maseh, it's Matot. And then the four Maseh, thank you. Then the four Pazers, and then five
Shalshelets.
Four Shalshelets, and then the five Kefulas.
Right. So that's great. So because there isn't a dot, there isn't a dagesh in the cho, ta'aseh goes with cho. Okay, so ta'aseh can go that way, but we also need a resolution for the dargah. So ta'aseh has to go that way to go with the lama, or else you don't have a dargah without a resolution, either ravia or a tavir. You got to have something after the dargah. So that's why I like ta'aseh to finish the first one, ta'aseh to go with the next one. Is the way I do it. Ta'aseh. But I don't want to disagree with my rabbi.
You can disagree. Rick basically invented a trup, which is lovely, right? Like Rick said, this is how a kfula should sound. And in 1,000 years, when all of the Jewish people are singing a kfula that way, we will know that we were friends with the person who invented it. But that's actually how trup got created in the first place. That someone said this is how the word should sound. Joanna.
So one of my trope teachers taught me that what you were talking about, that a tipcha is normally a break or a pause after it, but merchak kula is conjunctive leading into the next, is precisely why the tavir is replaced with merchak kula, because a disjunctive break trope at that point doesn't work with the meaning of the sentence. And even though dargah normally resolves with rivi'i or tavir, as Rick pointed out, that clause is like subordinate to the tipcha clause that follows it. Tipcha is a higher level break in the sentence than a tavir. So the major break that we're leading to anyway is to get to the tipcha. So one of my trope teachers taught me.
Great. Now, I think that if everyone else on this class is falling asleep because we're so deep in a trup vortex, we'll get out of it in a second. Another way of saying what Joanna just said is that even though the note dargah da 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 on the word lama usually is part of a two-word phrase because it ends with da 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 dun dun da 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 or dun da 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 dun dum dum da da dum. The meaning here is that the word that has the dun dun da 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 is actually standing on its own. Why? And then the phrase is, "Are you doing this to your servants?" So that are you doing this to your servants should be like merchat tipcha sof pasuk, and therefore the word ta'aseh can't have the da 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 da. Why are you doing this to your servants? And that may be why it was turned into a kfula. We'll never know, but that's an interesting possibility. Stevie.
So first of all, with regards to trope, I think I do a kfula more like a tavir with a tail. So I think more similar to Rick than to you. But anyway, that's. But what I also want to say is the structure of the verse here with verb, subject, verb, object is kind of interesting. Like it seems like the verse is specifically constructed so that vayitzaku, like the crying is to Pharaoh, but the coming is like separated from being like to Pharaoh, whereas it maybe could have said U shotre Israel ba'u vayitzaku el, or ba'u el paro vayitzaku alav, or I don't know, like there's other possible constructions you can imagine where the verbs are more or less adjacent, or where the first verb goes to Pharaoh and the second verb, is then tagged onto that. And it seems, I don't know, interesting, deliberate because like coming to Pharaoh is, I think, even how most of the translators probably do it, like came to Pharaoh and cried. But it seems specific that like vayitzaku is the verb that's chosen to be attached to Pharaoh.
Great, because you're saying that the el paro to Pharaoh applies both to the vayitzaku and to the ba'u, right?
In terms of what it means, for sure.
Yeah. Interestingly, so that actually, your comment makes a little more sense out of how Everett Fox translated it, because he's making a choice. Everett Fox translates this verse, again, whose vocabulary is very easy. The officers of the children of Israel came and cried out to Pharaoh. So Everett Fox is saying the El Paro is connected to the Vayava'u and the Vayitzaku, even though it's not constructed that way in Hebrew, rather than translating it as the officers of the children of Israel came, or came with like a semicolon, and they cried out to Pharaoh. So he's connecting the to Pharaoh to both of those verbs.
Right. The JPS here says came to Pharaoh and cried, which I mean is correct, but it's like definitely the Hebrew is sort of constructed in a way to not say that.
Yeah. What did you? I'm just reading Larry's note here. If anyone, but the four least frequent by far the least frequent at 12. Oh, you're talking all of Tanakh. Got it. And then,
well, I have all of Tanakh. I have also broken down by by Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. But
did you do that on your own?
No. But there are various sources that do that, including even Wikipedia. I was only commenting that those four are so much by far the least common.
Right.
Because Ipazer is 615 times in Tanakh,
right,
and 154 times in Torah, even though it's Rick's favorite of all the trope.
Yeah. Thank you. Tova.
I actually just posted to chat. I've been trying to figure out what you guys were talking about for the last little while, and I just realized my problem was that Silberman shows it as a tavir, not a kefula.
Wow. So that means Silberman would say there are only 4 kefulas in the Torah.
Yeah. I kept looking at it going, what are you guys talking about?
Wow. There are some trup discrepancies here and there. I did not realize that there was a trup discrepancy on how many kefulas there were. I thought that was unanimous. Interesting. All right. I think we have mined this verse for what it can produce. So let's go to the next verse, verse 16, particularly as Rashi says nothing on this verse anyway. Renee, do you want to read verse 16 by Tevin?
Sure. Lama.
Next verse, Tevin.
Tevin en Natan, Lavdecha ulevanim. אומרים לנו, עשו והנה עבדך מוקים חטאת עמך.
Okay, see what you can do to translate that.
Straw was not given to your servants, but they tell us, make bricks.
Right.
And behold, the servants were beaten, and it's a sin on your people.
Okay. So first thing we identify is once again highlighted in the comment that Stevie said before, that word la'avadecha appears twice in this verse and apparently referring to different groups. The first la'avadecha refers to the people that the supervisors are responsible for, the actual Israelite slaves, that they're not given straw, they have to make bricks. And the second avadecha is avadecha mukim, your servants are smitten, which seems to be a reference to what happened 2 verses ago, that the supervisors were hit. And the verse is written tersely, right? As all Torah verses are, but there are almost some missing words that you have to fill in. And this is continuing what the Shotrim are saying in front of Pharaoh, after they had said, "Why are you doing this to your servants?" Maybe meaning both us and the people we are responsible for. They continue, "After all, Pharaoh, straw is not given, ulavanim," and I'm going to add in, but with respect to the bricks that are supposed to be produced from the straw, omrim lanu, they say to us, that's referring, I imagine, to the nogsim, the taskmasters, asu, do it, right? Very, very terse language. And behold, therefore, as a result, hard to know what to do with the behinei, avadecha mukim, your servants here, probably meaning us, the ones speaking, are smitten. And what an interesting phrase. V'chata'at amecha. Let's hear some phrase, without looking at the translations, let's hear some possibilities for what that phrase means. We know what the word means. The word chatat has to do with sin or transgression. Amecha is your people. What does the phrase mean? I see
Fox says fault is your people's.
Right. So let's put the translations aside for a second, see if we can work it out in our own minds. Tova and then Larry, Diane.
Actually, why don't you go ahead, because I had a comment on something different, which I can speak to Larry about later.
This one is Diane.
Diane.
So what they really want to say to Pharaoh is, this is your fault, Pharaoh, but they can't. I mean, it's shocking to me. This is written in a way, going back to the last verse, that these Shotrim actually have access to Pharaoh is sort of mind-boggling in itself. But they for sure can't say, Pharaoh, this is your fault. You gave the order. So they're going to blame Pharaoh's people and hope that he gets it.
And so therefore, you're reading the chatat amecha, meaning since your people, kind of the nogsim, have put this on us to put on the Israelites, this problem is a problem that your people have created.
Right.
Good. Any other possibilities for how to make sense of v'chata'at amecha, or even the grammar of what v'chata'at amecha means? Okay, so let's hear Tova's comment, and then we'll do a little more surgery on the verse itself.
Mine was referring to earlier, you made the comment that the 2 avadechas are sort of different, but when I first read it, one possibility occurred to me that what they were saying was, no straw has been given to thy servants, to us, suggesting that the straw had been delivered to the bailiffs, to the overseers, who then distributed to the people. And so literally, you haven't been giving us the materials you previously gave to us to allow us to then pass that on to the actual slaves to produce the bricks, rather than there being a distinction between the avadechas.
Interesting.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But that.
And does anyone want to hazard an interpretation of the phrase chatat amecha that does not have amecha mean Egyptians? I know I'm leading the witness, but can anyone squeeze something like that out of it? While you're thinking about that, Barry, your hand was up.
Possibly. So jumping ahead, apologies. So the Hatat, this is the first time that Egypt is referred to as people of Havatah, and subsequently begin the unfolding of all the plagues. So this is like a court of law here, and it has to be brought forward what the actionable item is. and this is the actionable item. They've sinned by forcing this impossibility on the Israelites. This is the action.
Interesting. So even before the worst of it comes, we have the Torah naming the Egyptians as sinners, and sinners are worthy or deserving of punishment. Interesting. Okay, Joanna?
So to answer your question, this is another place where nikudot are vital, because the word amecha could be read as imcha. So now there's a really interesting contrast, because one might expect that what they would say is the sin is with you, Paro, but if the word is amecha, it's not just with you, Paro, it's with all of your people, and it's almost like implicating Paro, I think, because we used to get the straw from all of your people's storehouses. So now that you're holding this back, Paro, be aware that, like, not only are you making life difficult for us, but you're causing not just yourself, but all your people to sin, with the implication that maybe the Shotrim aren't prepared to say yet. And that's going to come back to bite you at the end of the story.
Right. It's as if we really try to imagine this happening, and with the characters in the scene themselves playing with the grammar and the absence of vowels that we as readers get to play with, as if they said v'chata'at ayin mem chaf, wink, 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 right? Like there's a sin, and I'm not going to tell you what vowels I'm putting in the next word to suggest that I'm accusing you. No, I didn't put those vowels there, but I'm laying an accusation close to you. Okay, interesting. Larry, Diane.
So first of all, I'm going to vote for Joanna's comment as being the commentary of the year. I think it's just brilliant. I had one that was similar, not exactly that. So we talked about the 4 levels, but now I'm going to add a 5th. So imagine that they said, kind of like the translation is, the fault is with your people, and your people are his advisors. So when you want to criticize a leader, you often don't criticize the leader, but you say you're getting bad advice. So as opposed to being either the Egyptians in general or the Israelites or anybody else.
Right. So great. So let's use all of that as a way to kind of jump into the Rashi. Rashi actually is focused not on the vowels of amecha as if it could be imcha, but on the vowels of chata'at, and how that word is vowelized impacts its meaning. And then if we have time, we'll compare to at least one other commentator on Sefaria. So Renee, do you want to read V'chata'at amecha? Oh, sorry, there's a previous one. Ulevanim omrim lanu asu. Okay, go ahead. So we may not get to the Chata'at amecha part 1.
Ulevanim omrim lanu asu, anoksim omrim, asu lanu lavanim, minyan harishon.
Okay.
So they tell us, make the overseers say, make bricks for us, like the earlier total before you had to gather your straw.
Right. So here, I think this is one of the rare cases that all Rashi is doing is filling in words, right? I'm not sure there's a great enlightenment intended here, but as we saw when we were translating the verse, it's tersely written. Ulvenim omrim lanu asu. And the bricks, they say to us, do. Rashi says, if that seems like it's missing a couple of phrases, let me add it in. And he says, regarding the bricks, the noksim, the taskmasters, omrim lanu, are telling us, asu, do. Do what? Do the bricks like you had been before. We knew that's what it meant, but Rashi is just trying to not even paraphrase, just extend. It's the same thing that sometimes, when you're looking at, like the Talmud is also in very tersely, very coded, clipped language. And when you're reading not a commentary on the Talmud like a Rashi, but an explication of the Talmud like a Steinsaltz, he'll just put in the words that will help you make a full sentence out of the words that are there. And that's not really commenting on it, even though every attempt is some kind of commentary. It's just filling it out. So I think this is one of the rare Rashis where he's just filling it out. It's possible that there's something else going on that I'm not picking up on, but that's how I'm choosing to read that. Any thoughts or comments on that before we do the Chata?
So they were just asked to make not only the bricks they were already making, so it was just the amount that they were needing to meet.
Say that again?
The bricks they were already making before anyway. It's just the amount, it seems like, that they're commenting on.
Well, that the amount that they are supposed to make is the same, but they now have fewer raw products to make them out of.
To reach that amount, yeah.
Correct. Joel and then Larry, Diane?
Another possible reading could be you're no longer giving straw to your people or to your servants, and you're asking us to do it. Not to make the bricks, but to supply this.
Good. Larry, Diane?
I just want to read Alter. I'll read the text and then his commentary. Straw is not given to your servants, comma, and bricks, they tell us, make, comma, and, comma, look, comma, your servants are beaten and the fault is your people's. So his comment is, there's a colloquial immediacy in the language with which the overseers express their outrage to Pharaoh, positioning straw and bricks at the beginning of the first and the second clauses. So he thinks it's really important that it's worded that way. It doesn't sound like polite language. I think that's the point.
Great, thank you for that. Rick?
Hi, I had a question. If Onkelos would help us at the end of the sentence, he adds alehon. I see v'chatan and I see amach, and then there's alehon there. Can you help translate that? I don't know.
Yeah, so v'chatan alehon amach seems to mean, and the sin, the sin is upon them, your people. To make it even more clear in the Aramaic that he's saying that Onkelos is saying that the Shotrim are saying to Pharaoh, as a result of this whole quagmire, your whole people is in a sinful place, and is that really the stance that you want to take, Pharaoh? Something like that. Alehom is alehem.
Okay.
Stevie, and then we'll see if we have time to read the Chatat.
Yeah, I mean, Rashi is sort of pointing out that the word noksim is absent in the verse, and that seems to be saying the overseers don't want to point out that the taskmasters are like also Pharaoh, like that Pharaoh put, chose them or empowered them or whatever. Like is sort of saying like those are troublemakers, and like we're your loyal servants. Like you've got nothing to do with those people, right? So just like trying to not include their title in their complaint.
Great. And this goes back to Larry and Dilbert and trying to figure out if we really imagine these Shotrim in our mind, the position they were in, and what kind of political chits they have to bring to Pharaoh if they have even a audience with him, and how do they use them? And how do they use them to protect the people and to protect themselves? And to levy implied critique is really hard to do with someone who has life and death authority over you, right? So there's a lot going on here, including probably some game theory. Renee?
I was just struck by Everett Fox has a footnote to his translation where instead of considering that instead of amcha meaning your people, that it means imcha, with you.
Yeah. So Everett Fox and Joanna are on the same page, right? That the ayin mem chaf can look like with you. I don't know if what Everett Fox is saying there. I don't remember if there's a manuscript question there or if it's a midrash question. I don't remember if he's saying that there are some manuscripts from the early Middle Ages of this verse that actually point it differently, or if there are midrashim that say al tikra amecha, don't read it as amecha, but rather imach, right?
It seems like he's just focusing it on the actual Hebrew literal word.
Right, but I don't know.
He's not referring back to something biblical.
Well, I don't know if if when he says which some read means some people playfully read it that way, or if there are midrashic texts that actually play that game. Rebecca Leonard?
Yeah, there's a footnote in the JPS translation that talks about this. And it says here, the English rendering of the difficult v'chatat amecha takes the first word as a noun, a form otherwise unattested. The Samaritan tradition also understands it this way, but reads it imecha, with you, as does Symmachus, whoever that is. And the Septuagint and something else read it vechatata, you sinned against your people.
Mm-hmm.
But that even still, that's unclear whether that is referring to the Egyptians or the Israelites.
Right, good. So if we go back to what Joanna said about how amecha could be pointed and how that could be a veiled or less veiled accusation against Pharaoh, pointing v'chata'at differently is even more direct. If it's not v'chata'at a noun, but v'chatata a verb, you Pharaoh have sinned. And what Rashi is going to play with is not whether or not v'chatat is a verb, but whether the word is by itself or in smichut. Maybe I'll just set that up right now, and then we'll actually not read Rashi till next week, right? So a reminder that smichut is the Hebrew way of saying when a noun modifies a noun. Beit Sefer, right? It's a house. What kind of house is it? It's a book house. It's a Beit Sefer, a house of a book, right? And in English, you usually have an of in between, unless it's become a compound word, like a basketball court is not really a compound word, but like
a bookcase, Rabbi, bookcase,
right? It's a case of books, right? In Hebrew, that's called smichut. And sometimes, if the word is in smichut, how the word is spelled and pointed changes, particularly if the word is feminine, right? So Torah, it's a noun. Torat Chaim, the Torah of life. The Torah, the word Torah turns into Torat in the feminine, Torah of. In masculine, sometimes there's no vowel change at all. So Sefer, book. Sefer Kritut, this is what's this, the Torah's word of phrase for a get, right? That you have to write a book of disconnection. The word Sefer looks the same in letter and in vowel, whether it's on its own or in smichut. But there are some nouns, even masculine nouns, that when they're in smichut, when it's the noun of something else, the vowels change, and then that will change the meaning. So what Rashi is going to do next time, because we're at 9:30, is say the second vowel in the word v'chata'at indicate, if we can trust the transmission of this text through the years, indicates what the word does and does not mean. So he's not focused on amecha, he's focused on v'chatat. So I see from the chat that 3 people said they're comfortable meeting in person, although one of them is not going to be in town for a while. Please email me, and email me by today, because I want to make a decision as to where we're going to meet next week, because maybe next week is the first time to do this, and maybe and it'll take, I need some time to set up the logistics of it. And again, we will be offering it on Zoom as well, but I want to see if we can meet in person.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.